All right, good morning. I appreciate the worship. I love it that we're here to worship and not like perform or entertain or all that. You know, we don't sell popcorn, so.
We could.
We could.
Yeah.
Toby's going to read something.
Yeah, we've got scripture reading this morning from Philemon, chapter 1. It's just the one chapter. Verses 8 through 16, which is on page 1000 if you're using the chair Bible in front of you. Philemon, verse 8. Therefore, although in Christ I could be bold and order you to do what you ought to do, yet I prefer to appeal to you on the basis of love. It is as none other than Paul, an old man and now also a prisoner of Christ Jesus, that I appeal to you for my son Onesimus, who became my son while I was in chains. Formerly he was useless to you, but now he has become useful both to you and to me. I am sending him, who is my very heart, back to you. I would have liked to keep him with me so that he could take your place in helping me while I am in chains for the gospel. But I did not want to do anything without your consent, so that any favor you would do would not seem forced, but would be voluntary. Perhaps the reason he was separated from you for a little while was that you might have him back forever, no longer as a slave, but better than a slave, as a dear brother. He is very dear to me, but even dearer to you, both as a fellow man and as a brother in the Lord.
Good. Thank you, Toby. Appreciate that. We read that last week. Going to look at a little different part of that this week. But just to start at the beginning, in case someone is here visiting online, hasn't a clue what we're doing, who we are, we're Grace Life Bible Church. And because we're intentional disciples who trust Jesus and continually fix our eyes on Jesus, we are secure and worry-free receivers, not weary achievers. And I just really hope that slowly sinks into you and how you view yourself. Because of who Jesus is, what he has done, and because of simple belief in him, we can be grateful receivers of salvation, not trying to earn it and all that. And so a more complex version over here, our values, we're going through those. Knowing God and his word, we did that. Experiencing grace and forgiveness, we did that. And then growing in healthy relationships, we're going to be doing that today. And impacting. You know what? I'll get to this. Next week is special. We're doing impacting in a couple weeks. But then we have grace-based rhythms. And so because we respond to God's love, we read and follow his word. We experience grace, so we extend it, and growing in healthy relationships logically flows from those, and then serving others logically flows from that as well. And so here's kind of where we've been, what we're doing. Today's January 18th, I think. Yep, okay, good. Growing in healthy relationships. Next Sunday, super special opportunity. There's a guest speaker that the schedule worked out. Corey Miller is going to come and speak on thoughtful Christianity, the need of the hour in this cultural revolution. Just super culturally relevant issues. And so highly recommend you come. This is the time to bring a friend who's struggling with Christians are bad, God is, whatever, okay? This is the time to bring them. The whole 11 o'clock hour will also be a time with Corey, engaging and talking about cultural issues, pressures, Christianity. Really, really recommend that we do that. And then we'll follow up, wrapping up the book, okay? So that's what's going on. So, remember a couple weeks ago, I can't remember, last week or the week before, we were talking about superpowers, and I thought it'd be cool, my superpower of choice would be to hold my breath, because that just obviously has advantages, but flying, maybe. I saw this on Facebook. It's just kind of funny. Some of you might need to explain it to the quiet people, but anyway. So Facebook can be fun, and I saw this on Facebook too. If you want to be like Jesus, then forgive, because Jesus forgives, okay? It makes it sound simple, doesn't it? So today we're digging into the whole concept of forgiveness and relational health. Like, if I have problems with somebody, do I have to choose between the relationship or fixing the problem? And so we saw a funny video last week about that. But we're in the book of Philemon, and Philemon is all about forgiveness. And it's not just forgiveness, it's how Paul does it that is so sophisticated and so winsome and so amazing. And so I invite you, if you have any kind of a business staff, people who answer to you, responsible, that you kind of try to guide in some way, I would encourage you, challenge you to read Philemon and give it to the group and ask them, what can we learn about healthy communication in conflict? And just see what they find. It is fascinating, right? It could be an avenue to the gospel too, but it's kind of fun. So we're going to review a little bit. We have maps, just because I'm throwing around some city names and maybe we're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, the maps can help, okay? So here's the background of the book of Philemon. Philemon is a guy. It's not a city. It's a guy. And he was a slave in Colossae. And he's serving Onesimus, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Onesimus is a slave serving Philemon in the city of Colossae. And so Philemon is doing that, but he steals some stuff. He runs and hides in Rome. You can hide in Rome because it's big and you can just disappear. Meanwhile, Paul is arrested in Rome, and somehow Onesimus meets Paul. Onesimus gets saved, and then Onesimus is like, ooh, hey, Paul, what do I do? I mean, I have experienced grace and forgiveness, but I used to be working for this guy named Philemon in the city named Colossae, and I stole some stuff and head to Rome. And so what do I do? And so Paul is helping him out, and he sends a letter. He handwrites a letter to Philemon about Philemon's former slave, Onesimus. And he says, take this letter, you and Tychicus, go to Colossae and hand deliver this letter. And so Paul is thinking, well, hey, since you're going to Colossae, you're going to go through Ephesus. I'm going to write a letter to the church at Ephesus, the Ephesians. And so Onesimus and Tychicus deliver Ephesians, then also the book of Colossians, and then finally they deliver personally the letter to Philemon. Now, I'm going to make a big deal of this later, but just imagine Onesimus, the former slave, going into his neighborhood to the very house that he fled with a letter from crazy Paul that says, hey, you should forgive everything of this guy that's handing you the letter and just, take him as a brother. And imagine Onesimus. He's just like, is he going to buy this? I mean, this is a big ask. So that's a pressure, and we certainly want to experience that. So and feel that. So this is one of his prison epistles. He wrote these in jail, and I said every prisoner causes problems. You can memorize that: Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Philemon, EP, CP. But then the more mature people think, well, every prisoner can pray, right? And so made a joke about that. But anyway, that's what we're doing. All right. So story time. When I was teaching at Grace, I taught in college for 25 years, and it was great. And the first semester I taught, I was teaching Joshua Judges Ruth. It was a good experience. And there was a guy, most of the students are college students, but there's this one guy that was like, 45. He was in ministry locally. He was a leader in the prison ministry here in this town, executive and stuff. And he's taking this class. So he's an adult, kind of just getting back into college. And he's stressed because, it's been a while, right? And just a little intimidated, nervous. And so we're teaching, and he's doing fine. But then I have this test. I have a paper test, 3 pages, front page of 1, flip it, the back of page 1, and then the front of page 2. Questions, answers, all this kind of stuff. So I take the test, I go home, and I'm grading them, and, I flip his over, and the whole back of the front page, nothing, no answers. First page, 100%. Third page, 100%. Second page, nothing. And I'm like, what do I do? Is he scamming me? If I give him a 0 for all that, he fails miserably. I'll come back to that. But anyway, we'll do that. So it's interesting, all right? Here's what we're talking about today, all right? Keeping it relational. How can I grow in healthy relationships when I have confrontation? And it's super practical. I'm going to end with some just crazy, straight-up practical, this is how, okay? It's one of many ways. It's not like the only way, okay? So how do we grow in relationship when we have a conflict? Do I have to choose between fixing the problem or the relationship? Because if all you want is to fix the problem, you can fix the problem. But you're probably going to kill a relationship or injure a relationship as you fix the problem, if that's all you care about. If all you care about is peace and harmony in a relationship, you can have that, but you're probably not going to solve anything. So how do we do both, okay? That's kind of where we're trying to be, all right? Navigate both. That's what we want. All right, so Paul he's already said in verse 6, his main goal in this letter is to get Philemon to a place where he is going to exercise his faith and forgive Onesimus. That's his goal, all right? He doesn't command him. We'll get into that. But he says, I pray that your faith's participation may become effective. It's kind of a convoluted way to say, you need to listen to what I'm saying and do it, okay? That's what he's saying. All right, so we're going to go to verse 8, kind of pick up there. Toby read that. But I love this phrase here. Although I'm bold enough to command you to do what is required, for love's sake I appeal. And that's just beautiful right there, okay? He is focusing on the relationship because he's like, if I command you, you might do A, B, and C, but you and I have now a weird relationship because I've just made you do something. And your relationship with Onesimus, just following my command, I have an endeared love between you two. So, commanding can get the job done, but at the price of relationships, okay? And so he is not, he does not make a problem-centered statement, commanding, leveraging his authority. Remember, this is the only book that Paul doesn't say, I'm an apostle, okay? He comes in low. He is relational focused. He says, I could command you, but I appeal to you. I am more interested in your development than getting my way. This is a big risk for Paul because Paul leaves the door open. After all his pretty smooth communication, it's a reality that Philemon could shut the door and say, nah, not going to do that. That could happen. I mean, but if you read the letter and if you envision any kind of relationship between Philemon and Paul, you're like, there's no way. After what Paul says, they could happen. But it could happen. Okay. All right. Paul is community focused. Remember, this is a public letter. In this culture, Paul is writing a letter to the churches all around Ephesus and all around Colossae. And even though this is to a guy, he's not going to go into his little study, shut the door, pull the blinds, and read it. It is addressed to a group of people, a church. And they're going to read it in church. And Philemon is sitting over here, and he's hearing, hey, you should forgive this slave. And everyone else is hearing that Philemon should, and it's just like, there's a bit of social pressure. So part of what Paul is doing is, I want the best for the church. I want what's best for Philemon. I want what's best for Onesimus. And I want what's best for the church, because we're all in this together. And it also says Paul and Timothy. But then you never hear anything about Timothy. And I'm convinced that Paul is training Timothy because pretty soon Paul is going to give him the baton and say, go to Ephesus. You got some wolves in the bushes there. They're going to come out. So figure that out. But this, Timothy, this is how we solve conflict in the church. It's through love and relationships, not just through, boom, I have power, so shut up and do what's right. All right? All right. So this is where our personality comes into play. When we talk about keeping the relationship bigger than the problem, it looks different to each one of us because of how we're wired, okay? So there's this fun personality profile, all the disc and this and that and all the stuff, and some of them are pretty simple and some are complicated. This is a simple one. I like this one. This is a lion, otter, beaver, golden retriever. It's like, okay, I understand this. Like the lion, they're leaders. They're super strong. They're decisive, direct. They get things done. They're going 100 miles an hour. They know what to do. The weaknesses are they can be insensitive, impatient, controlling, and they attack the problem even if they hurt others, and they're happy about it. We got it done. I don't know what the people are crying about back here, but we got it done. And so their challenge is to keep the relationship bigger than the problem, even though the temptation is to solve the problem and hurt the people, okay? And these are obviously general stereotypes. The otter, outgoing, talkative, fun. Their whole thing is fun. Let's just have fun. But they're easily offended, impulsive, undisciplined, and they can verbally attack others with great skill. And so their challenge is how do we keep the relationship bigger than the problem and not verbally shred other people? Okay, that's kind of a challenge. Then you go over to the beaver. Analytical, precise, deliberate, very, very concerned about getting things done right. It has to be precise. There's accuracy. These people do not only read the manuals, the instructions, they write the instruction manuals, okay? And they catch all the typos and all this. They can be critical, self-centered, negative, and they attack others with the facts. No, that's not what you said. You said this. We did this. This is okay. It's just like facts. Facts drive everything. Okay. Okay. I got to tell a funny story. Won't even remotely name it. We were doing pre-marriage counseling with a guy and his fiance, and she was all distraught. We just don't talk much. I think they were separated, like just geographically for a while. We don't talk much, and all this. And he pulls out his phone. No, in fact, we do. See, I called. And right away, I'm like, dude, you have so much to learn. Anyway, it was a classic moment. So sometimes facts aren't the problem, right? It's the feeling that are behind the facts. Okay, anyway. And then the golden retrievers, super loyal. Man, they are sensitive. They are so sensitive, they're easily hurt. And they carry the weight of other people's problems. And they can hold on to pain with great loyalty. All right, and that can be a problem. The problem there is they don't attack; they just avoid everything. Okay, now so based on this letter, where forgiveness is the issue, you have to kind of identify, and maybe you're 20% here, 60% there, whatever. And again, that's a gross stereotype, but it is helpful because I see myself clearly in a couple of those zones, and especially some tendencies with the negative things, and it's okay just to go, wow. The Lord has made me and you uniquely, and we need to understand that. So when we're looking at forgiveness, understand how that sounds to us and where we can go with that. Okay, so all that to say, Paul is saying, I could command you to do what's required, but for love's sake I appeal. What's required? I could command you to do what's required. How does Philemon know it's required? All right. Social norms require some things, and the gospel requires different things. And Paul is in the gospel column, okay? And the gospel flips everything upside down. Have you noticed this? The weak are made strong. The last are first. The humble are exalted. The proud are brought low. The widow, the alien, the orphan are valued highly. The unfair are defended with dignity. The seemingly insignificant go to the front of the line. The lost are found, the broken are healed. And here in this book, a redeemed, reconciled slave is forgiven. This is not how society functions, okay? So what was required was to obey Paul's request and forgive Onesimus and receive him back as a brother, a seat at the table. Imagine a table. Paul, Philemon, Onesimus equals talking about ministry. That's Paul's vision, okay? And what Paul is suggesting is not fitting with Roman culture, okay? Their culture says you catch slaves, you return them, you punish them, maybe you kill them because that's legal if it's bad enough, but that's what the culture says, and Paul is suggesting things that are countercultural. And in the first century, the whole tenor of Christianity is very countercultural and probably viewed with great suspicion in that culture. Remember, the term Christian is a very derogatory term in the first century. It was not a good thing, okay? And so Jesus is all countercultural and making the Pharisees upset, and Paul is like, you're doing crazy things here with throwing out our culture. Paul says, we model forgiveness, all right? Have him back as a brother. What does our culture do with people that hurt us or offend us? Lately, it seems we go to social media and just shame them, and mount these crazy attacks from a distance that people say things online that you would never say face to face. Or maybe they would, which is a greater problem. Anyway, that's just part of our culture, all right? Shun, shame, silence, that's what our culture does. Verse 10. I appeal to you for my child, Onesimus, whose father I became in prison. Probably should explain that he didn't meet some woman there in prison. It's his spiritual father, okay? That's what he's saying. He became a believer in jail, and so I'm his spiritual father. And forgiveness, he's appealing to that. Paul, throughout this whole letter, seems to view the problem through the glasses, the lens of relationship. He's not focused on getting the job done. He's focused on the relationship. he has the end in mind. All right? He's like, at the end of this whole thing, what's the best case scenario for Philemon? What's the best case scenario for this church and Onesimus, right? And that's what he's trying to. He's willing to throw out some things, some guarantees, the guarantee of command. He's willing to give that up because I have a better goal in mind. It's a gospel goal of reconciliation and love-motivated forgiveness. Okay, so that's what he's doing. So forgiveness is highly relational. Have you guys heard of an IQ, right? Intelligent, the whole IQ thing. There's also a thing that people write about for decades about EQ, emotional quotient, like a high-functioning emotional ability to really do well with people, to do well with insults, injury, shame deflected to you. We don't just freak out and start yelling back and throwing things, okay? We deal with that in a mature way, and we look for any truth in that. Because we're secure in our relationship with Christ, we're free to entertain that I perhaps dropped the ball. How can I improve that next time? And high emotional forgiveness is a high EQ thing. That's what I'm trying to say. Forgiveness requires an emotionally mature person. Emotionally mature people are always grateful people. Get to that in a bit. But we see the problem through the lens of relationship. Now think about problems you've had in the past with people. When the relationship ceases to be important, usually that's when things start to go downhill. Smoke, flames, screaming, all right? All this kind of stuff. So the value of the relationship colors how we deal with the problem. And Jesus is like this. Like, look at Jesus' forgiveness. He's all about the relationship with us. He is sacrificing everything, his very life, to reach out to us, to extend forgiveness to us. He's the ultimate model of what it means to be forgiving in this manner, keeping the relationship ahead. Okay, and so Paul seems to be saying this: Philemon, you followed me and found Jesus, and you found forgiveness. Onesimus followed us both to Jesus, and Onesimus has found forgiveness. Philemon, will you follow Jesus now in this situation and extend the forgiveness that you've experienced to him? If you've heard the gospel, this is sort of the sense I get. If you've heard the gospel, Philemon, I need to see it. That's kind of what he's saying, right? These aren't just ideas. This should show up here and now, okay? However, high EQ people, great to be around them. We were eating last night with, Donna had a business dinner thing. It was super great, nice place, and the waitress was just unbelievable, just high-functioning, she's describing the food, a lot of words I've never heard. I'm like, I'll have the salmon, but I don't know what else you're saying about it, but it was a pretty nice place. Anyway, it was a pleasure dealing with someone who's very emotionally mature and just stable and bringing everything to the Some people are not like that. Some people are like this. May the lights I burn from the bridges guide my way. Right? Some people are like human chainsaws. They just attack everything, and everything's bad, and so that's not our picture, okay? I went to AI and I said, make me a picture of may the lights they burn. That's what it gave me. Isn't that great? Anyway, AI can be fun, but you got to be careful. All right. Anyway, okay. So the tone is loving and reconciliatory, and we need to be motivated by the long-term goals of what we want in this relationship, okay? So verse 11, now remember, Onesimus means useful. Paul says, who? Onesimus, useful. He was useless to you, but now he's useful to you and me. He's being cute, okay? And so Paul is saying he's changed, he's redeemed, he's moved from death to life, and he's useful. So I'm sending him back to you, sending him my very heart. I would be glad to keep him. He's very valuable. I'd be glad to keep him in order that he might serve with me, or might serve me on your behalf during my imprisonment. And so the idea is like, you know what? I'd be happy to keep him. And Philemon, you should be happy to keep him. You're happy, aren't you, to keep it? You're happy, aren't you? This is just like you, to forgive him and welcome him back. Can't you see that? All right. But I prefer to do nothing without your consent, in order that your goodness might not be by compulsion, but of your own accord. So he's doing a bit of power statements, and then he always backs up. I have in the past gone powerful and commanded, but in this situation, I'm going to back up and I know you're going to do more than I ask, right? Pretty powerful in a good way, all right? So Philemon has a choice, and again, Philemon could choose not to, but I think the relationship that Paul has, the respect that Philemon has for Paul, and the way Paul says this, it's very unlikely that Philemon is going to slam the door in Paul's face, all right? But, why is a question that haunts us all. Philemon was haunted by the question, why did Onesimus just steal from me and run away? I mean, why now? Everything's going so well, and why did this happen, and all these things? And Paul ventures a guess in verse 15. He says, well, maybe this is why he was parted from you for a while, so that you might have him back forever. No longer as a slave, but as a brother, especially to me, but how much more to you, both in the flesh and in the Lord. Masterful language of reconciliation and forgiveness. So Paul sees this whole thing through the gospel lens, right? Maybe this is why. Philemon, think about this. He left, he stole, but he's been redeemed. And maybe this whole scene is so that you can pull him back and create a little mental movie for the church of what the gospel looks like in real life. You have forgiven him. You welcome him at the table. That was his goal in the first place. Here's his goal. I appeal to you for my child Onesimus, that you might have him back forever, no longer as a bondservant, but more than a bondservant, as a beloved brother in Christ. And so that's his goal, his dream. And if you look at this relationship with Onesimus and Philemon, this quote makes a lot of sense. Christianity is not out to help a man escape his past and to run away from it. It's out to enable a man or woman to face his past and rise above it. And so it's a good quote. We are able to face our past. Of all people, like the very first slide I had, we're aware of our sin. It's okay to look in the mirror and go, yes, I did these things. I have sinned. And to own that in the context of what Jesus does for us. The greater we understand our sin, the more likely it is we're going to run to Jesus. If you're not running to Jesus, one of the top 3 reasons why is probably you don't understand your sin. Fair? If you don't have sin, you don't need a Savior. And so it's a healthy thing. You don't want to wallow in your sin and get stuck there and just beat yourself up and like I'm miserable, I'm just horrible, and I'm no good. Okay, that's not your identity. Even though it may be true, Jesus gives us a new identity. And so awareness of guilt, sin, and shame is a doorway that's supposed to leave us out of that room into the room of a new identity with Jesus. All right, so verse 17. If you consider me your partner, receive him as you would receive me. If he's wronged you with anything, I'll repay it. Now, this is where we get into a neat thing that everyone else is going to see in this text that we don't see. When Paul says, if he owes you anything, I will repay it, and Paul's leveraging other things like you owe your own self to me. I have authority, but I'm not going to use it. There's this system in the Roman culture called the patron-client relationship. And it ran everything, okay? And so a patron, like Philemon, had power, prestige. They would provide protection, money, work, social access, all kinds of stuff. And the client, like Onesimus, the servant, would provide public loyalty, thanksgiving, allegiance, vote for them, whatever, praise them in public. And this is just how the whole Roman culture went. And here's a quote down here. No one can make a start in the Roman culture, however outstanding his abilities, if he lacks scope and opportunity and a patron to support him. You could not get anywhere or do anything in this culture without a patron relationship. And this whole relationship is behind this when Paul is saying, Philemon, you're the head of the household. You own this slave. You provided for him. Another thing here, the patron was required to pay the debts of their clients. And so that's why Paul is like, well, hey, if he has any debts, You have to pay them, but I'll be happy to step in and pay them. Now, this is fun because this is where Paul is like, since he's your client, you have to pay his debts, but I will pay his debts. And so Paul is sort of putting himself in the patron role and saying, Philemon, you're sort of like, he's not saying this, but the language, and this is how it would be heard by everybody else. Paul has power, and Paul is expecting his client, Philemon, to do what he says in a very appropriate way. This is not manipulation. This is not bad. It's not sinful. It's just the cultural wave, the forces, the tide of the culture. They would understand that Philemon needs to give allegiance to Paul and reply. So that's what Paul is kind of skillful. He's just tapping into the culture. This is just how they thought. And so the patrons would help people find a spouse, get social promotion, help with land purchases. Maybe there's an office, a government office. They would help you find that. And the clients would reply with allegiance. Okay, so that is what's going on there. Yes, brother, verse 20. I want some benefit from you in the Lord. Refresh my heart in Christ. Confident of your obedience, I write to you knowing you will do even more than I say. And so, again, imagine how this plays out. Onesimus goes to Paul in prison in Rome, confesses to Paul what he's done. How does Onesimus know that Paul isn't going to be like, hit the buzzer, hey, guard, we got a criminal here, lock him up. He just confessed. Onesimus has no guarantees. So Paul is gracious. He's like, hey, I'll write a letter asking Philemon to forgive you. Take the letter, go, start walking. I mean, day after day, Onesimus has this letter with Tychicus, and he's like, what's he going to say? When I knock on the door and he opens the door and our eyes lock, emotions very present. Here, quick, read this before you hit me. I don't know. How does that go? What would it be like to be Onesimus? Where is he sleeping in Rome? What is he eating? He is on the run. He's in the ditch, eating in the dumpster. I don't know, but he's on the run. And all of a sudden, this letter that Paul gives him, if Philemon follows through with this, it's like the lottery. His entire life is different, open, and he can rest and thrive with acceptance as an equal. Does he even dare, as he's carrying the letter, does he even dare think that Philemon will do what's in this letter? Because if he does, it's just incredible, right? And then imagine Paul, Philemon, Onesimus at the same table, right? Imagine Paul's deep joy at the end of all this, when they're sitting around a table and there's a fireplace and they're sketching out ministry. What do we do here? What do we do there? And the very presence of Onesimus at the table as an equal is a mental movie of the power of the gospel. Have you ever been in the presence of somebody who's been reconciled, who after a long time has come back and they're at the table and you have that restored relationship? And there's a movie here. This is a long story of reconciliation. It's the power of the gospel. My wife and I are waiting for that. It's very painful. And so, in the meantime, we just have to be faithful to Jesus and walk through that. So you can be the presence of the gospel in someone else's life, right? If you've ever been forgiven much, you tend to not forget that, right? And so back to the story when I was a teacher, college, the adult guy, he's responsible, he's mature, he's in ministry, and I'm guessing he just didn't see it. But I'm thinking, if I just don't count it, how is that fair to the other students? I mean, do I have to wipe out the second page of every student? So I took a red pen and I just put a big slash through it and I wrote the letters grace. I didn't count it. I graded him on the first and third page. Is that fair? No. But grace isn't fair. Grace is unmerited favor. That's the point, okay? And so the guy, already he's an adult, re-engaging in college and a little nervous. And he told me, that made such a big impression on him. Years later, he still mentions it. He's like, oh man, I was under the gun. I fell short. I was going to fail. And you had grace. You saw through that I wasn't trying to scam or cheat, you know what I mean? And it's a small thing, right? But I'll never forget just staring at that page. What do I do? And I thought, grace, you know what I mean? So that's just kind of neat. Still a neat guy. Really impressed by him. Anyway, so at the same time, look how he ends the book. Verse 22. At the same time, prepare a guest room for me, for I'm hoping that through yours plural, prayers will be graciously given to you, plural. He starts plural with the whole church to all these people, and then he ends plural, all these people. So like a plural sandwich, like a group. Hey, Philemon, people are watching. Timothy's watching. The church is watching. It matters. It's just interesting. Again, not manipulation in a bad sense. It's just reality. I want you to understand what you do. It really matters, and other people are watching. All right? Okay. So, final greeting. Epaphras. A bunch of people are coming. Okay, so did this work? Church history says this probably did work. There's an Onesimus figure later on who rose up in the church leadership, and it's the same name. There's no absolute connection there, but it seems like it probably did work. Philemon responded well, and Onesimus thrived. That's pretty cool. But here we go. Here's some practical stuff. When we're trying to keep the relationship bigger than the problem, here are some takeaways that we can do, and they all follow from how Jesus treats us. All right, so this is from a book I read called Rare Leadership. Highly recommend it. Curiosity, appreciation, kindness, and then envelope of relationship. These are things we can do today when we have conflict. The first one is very simply curiosity. So when you're curious, you have your relational circuits on. You're thinking about them. When you're being threatened and attacked and shamed and the walls go up and you start shouting and yelling, you're not thinking about them. You're thinking about you. That's a natural fallen response. But when we're asking, how do you feel about this? We're in a relationship mode. We're aware of they have feelings about this thing. Tell me, has there been any other situation that you've experienced where it was like this, where things didn't work out, you know? Tell me what insight you have here. And our guard is down when they say something injurious, painful. We don't fight back, all right? So curiosity turns on our relational circuits. I never forget when Grace University was closing, I was with the director of the board, another person. She was a female, which explains why she did what she did. And the guy was explaining how we're shutting down the university. It was a big head. We were the first to know, and I kind of knew for a year. But anyway, and heavy news. And this woman says, well, Bill, how does that make you feel? I'm like, who cares? What are you talking about? We're closing the whole school. I don't care how Bill feels. But I was reminded of this. I'm like, wow, she's going relational. It was impressive. I was like, I was caught because I wasn't there. Anyway, that was good. Appreciation. You can turn your relational circuits on by being grateful. In marriages that are highly happy, they look for things to be grateful for. They look for them. They're very skilled at finding things to be thankful for, not only in marriage, but elsewhere. Like, on the surface, we're like, who does that? Like, who spends time looking for things? Maybe there's things you write down, and you pull them out. Just a second, honey. It's a start. Okay. Anyway, appreciation turns our relational circuits on. Kindness, right? Kindness is relational joy. Kindness is always relational, and the more you have, the more it's shared. It bubbles over, and you're not in relational mode when you cannot connect to someone else's joy. Someone else wins something. Neighbor years ago down the street won a Harley motorcycle. Seriously, he did. He was not a good man. And I told the Lord that. What is this? Anyway, so, but we need to be able to enter the joy of other people, okay? And then envelope a relationship, and this is kind of what that looks like. Last week it was different, but it's relationship, concern, relationship. And Paul's doing this. Philemon, you've given me joy, I love you, and people love you, and this, and here, Onesimus. We should forgive him, right? This is what we want to do. This is what the gospel, right? This is what the gospel do. All right, and I love you, and I'm coming to see you, and I'm so grateful for you. And it's not manipulation. With sincerity and truth, it's powerful, okay? So, we grow in healthy relationships by keeping the relationship bigger than the problem. You get that? See how the problem's small? Okay, just helping you out there. All right. So that's kind of fun. Kind of good stuff. Keep the relationship bigger than the problem. Think through the cake thing. You can engage your relational circuitry by asking questions. How do you feel about this? Do you have any other, just asking them, where are you with this? What is this doing to you? Appreciation. I appreciate you for this, that, and the other thing. And so those things can, when we find ourselves closed off to that, those are simple things that we can do to enter back into that mode and then move towards what Paul wants Philemon to do and respond with the gospel-motivated forgiveness, okay? So there is the chance, I've said this before, when Paul is laying this all out in the letter, he's not commanding, so the door's open for Philemon to ignore him. Now, here's my deal. If Philemon doesn't respond to grace, if he's hard-hearted, like, forget that, he probably wouldn't respond to a command either, right? And so if you're concerned, but I got to get it done, you're lying, got to get it done. And I'm afraid if I leave this wishy-washy invitation open, they're not going to do it. I'd be like, okay, if it's that bad, they probably aren't going to respond well to the command either. They may respond externally, but we're after the relationship. And the command is going to harm the relationship, even though you might get it done. Okay, so that's interesting, all right? All right, so we always like to see the problem through the lens of relationship. And we always like to end here with a couple questions. How are you? How are you doing at keeping the relationship bigger than the problem? Is the problem bigger? Do you see people through the lens of problem? Oh, you're the guy that always says this. I hate it when you say that. And you always say that. Not healthy, okay? Or are we like, I want a relationship with you. Strained right now, but let's work through. How are you feeling about this? Okay. Can you extend the grace and forgiveness that you've experienced from Jesus this week? Is there someone, some situation that you're like, right now you're like, oh no, I should do that. That's okay. Just ask the Lord, help me. I don't really want to. Just get me, like, I'm willing. That's all you got to say. Just, if you get me there, okay. Just little steps, all right? Do problems and conflict end your relationships, or do they grow them? They can do both. They can do both. You don't have to choose, okay? So, Lord, we're grateful for your grace, your work, and how Jesus, incarnate, God in the flesh, navigated a very brutal, violent, corrupt Roman culture, maintaining his walk with you, loving people. He always kept the relationship bigger than the problem. He loved his disciples to the end, even though they never really got the picture. And so we draw near to you, and we just pray that we would learn more of your love, and that love would drive us in our relationships. Amen.